from Yud Gimel Tishrei Tafshin Lamed Daled. Yud Gimel Tishrei Tafshin Lamed Daled was the 13th of Tishrei. In other words, it was the yahrzeit of the Rebbe Maharash. It was 3 days after the breakout of the Yom Kippur War. And at that time, obviously, the situation was extremely, extremely dire. There was no possibility of hope, etc., and positive things that could even be addressed at that time, that we could say, it's looking up, it's getting better. It was really, really serious and severe, and the Jewish community and the Frum community was also very, very distraught and didn't know how to go about things, and it's the middle of Yom Tov, and what's the approach? Should we be fasting? Should we be, calling Atzaris Tefillah, and so on and so forth? So here is what the Rebbe said by that Farbrengen. It was a Farbrengen that was done for the Rebbe Marash's yahrzeit. So we will skip over after the introduction about that it was the day, it was the night before Sukkot. So it was the end of Yud Gimel going into Yud Daled, the end of the 13th Tishrei going into Yud Daled. The Rebbe, in the first few paragraphs, explains the idea that there is the idea of the night after is in certain regards connected to the day before, etc., etc. Then we're going to skip down to Ois Beis, which is 5 paragraphs in. So the Rebbe asks the very obvious question that's on everybody's mind that was there with that Farbrengen. And also remember as well that just like many of us that are not just we are living in the United States, but this was also, we were surrounded by friends and acquaintances from Eretz Yisrael. Many people were there for Tishrei. They came from Eretz Yisrael. Many Bachrim were there that were learning, Israelis that were learning by Tishrei with the Rebbe. So a lot of people had very, very close relatives, close family members that were there as well. So the Rebbe says, seemingly there's a need for explanation. When there is a certain place, in other words, it doesn't even make a difference where. It could be anywhere in the world where Yidden are standing at war. And by the way, this emphasis about any place, perhaps we can connect with what the Rebbe often used to say about the halachas, about not returning different parts of Eretz Yisrael that Eibishter gave us b'matana. And he said, it's not about Eretz Yisrael, it's about the safety of Yidden. And the Rebbe brought a halach in Shulchan Aruch, in Siman Shin Chavtes, in Nechus Shabbos, how even if non-Jews are coming to pass through a city that's on the border of a Jewish community, it's not about Eretz Yisrael. So then, even on Shabbos, we have to go out with weapons to defend and make sure that they don't pass through, because perhaps something negative can occur. So the Rebbe's approach a lot of times was, yes, of course, Eretz Yisrael is Eretz Yisrael with all the power, but as far as Jewish lives being at stake, it doesn't make a difference if it's Eretz Yisrael or it's in Japan. The point is that there is a place in the world where Jews are fighting for their lives. Therefore, ma makom larech kanas vadas. What place is there to go ahead and make a Farbrengen? It's known, the saying of the Balei Lula, in other words, the Rebbe Maharash, whose yahrzeit this was, Shaloi kefisha olam saver, not the way the world believes and thinks. Shaseder shemenasim lavram mata arunter. That the order is first let's try to go under. And if we're not able to, then we jump over. The Reb Marash said, initially go over. This is the famous statement of the Reb Marash, known as L'chatchila Riber. And the Rebbe goes on further to say, it wasn't just a nice expression, a nice word, but the Rebbe Marash lived his life this way. Like it's also known what the Frierdiker Rebbe said about the Rebbe Marash. The way he in general did things was beyond nature in Baal Shemska Eifanim. The expression is in a Baal Shem type of way. The Baal Shem was known for doing things miraculously off the, completely off the books, in a way of going beyond and above. And the Rebbe Marash was as well that way. Other Sichas, the Rebbe speaks about different events in the Rebbe Marash's life, how he wasn't scared of the Russian government, and he gave them an ultimatum: if they don't stop the pogroms, he's going to go to Chutz La'aretz and he's going to campaign against them and reveal to them everything that they're doing. He should have been terrified. They can take him, lock him up, or even worse. But still in all, his approach was in the way of L'chatchila Dibur. So the Rebbe Marash lived in a way of L'chatchila Dibur, and therefore the Rebbe says this is the justification for the Farbrengen, as he will elaborate. Now, the Rebbe is going to say, many people will go ahead and say, well, it says in Shulchan Aruch, when there's trouble, you're supposed to fast, and you're supposed to cry, da, da, da. It doesn't say anything about a Farbrengen. So the Rebbe right away connects this with how this is something that's brought down according to Nigla. Like it's spoken about many times. Everything needs to have some type of expression in the revealed part of the Torah. It's not just like we can explain things according to Kabbalah and so on, but it has to have an expression in Nigla, even to Din, to Halacha. It needs to find everything. Torah is one Torah, it's Torah Achas. It can't be that Halacha or Shulchan Aruch will tell you one thing, and Pnimius HaTorah, Chassidus, or the Rebbe Chas v'Sholom will demand something that is for sure not against Halacha, but at least doesn't say in Halacha. So the Rebbe's style in everything and everywhere, like he says, Kimeduber Kamapam, the Rebbe very times spoke about it, where and how we can find things reflected in Nigla. But it's amazing because a lot of times people could not even imagine that this says in Nigla, and the Rebbe says it's an open halach, it's an open thing in Shulchan Aruch, it's an open Gemara, it's an open Paschei Chumash, and then everybody says, why didn't I see it? This is what we need of the Rebbe to reveal to us the obvious and the clear thing. So what the Rebbe is going to bring now is he's going to bring from a halacha, but he's going to make sure to bring from a halacha that says in the Siddur. The Alter Rebbe, when he put together the Siddur, he put in instructions in the Siddur. And not only that, there are certain instructions in the Siddur that the Siddur was written after the Shulchan Aruch, and in certain things he actually rules based on other halachic sources, different and updated than what he said in the Shulchan Aruch. Now, the Rebbe's approach is that if something says in the Siddur, that means it's clear, it's simple, it's for everyone, because everybody uses the Siddur. Men, women, and children. And we use it multiple times a day, as the Rebbe is going to explain now in the Sicha. So if it says it in the Siddur, there's really no, there's no, getting around it. It's not like a Gemara that you could say, maybe there's another Gemara that says somewhere differently, or it says in Shulchan Aruch one place, maybe there's a certain proviso over there. This is a clear, straightforward thing in the Siddur. He says, Yom Hailul Shad Marash, the yard site of the Rebbe Marash, Chal biyomim, it comes out in those days, shebehem ein ha'inyan shel amiras hatachnun, that in those days, in other words, the days between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, we do not recite Tachnun, the supplication prayers, the prayers where we say we have sinned, etc., etc. All these type of moaning and sighing type of prayers we're not allowed to say in this time. Like the Alter Rebbe wrote in the Siddur, Erev Yom Kippur, Ad Soif Tishrei, from the day before Yom Kippur until the end of the month of Tishrei, which we're in now, the last few days of Tishrei. There's no idea of reciting the supplication prayers, and the Fil Sapayim means the part of davening where we fall on our face, and so on and so forth. Like all the details that the Alter Rebbe enumerates in his Siddur. So the Rebbe asks a very simple question. Tishrei is still a day of the year, and it's still a day where we're davening today, Mishter. Don't we need to ask Hashem's forgiveness at that time? Don't we need to cry out to Hashem at that time? Well, top of the next page, seemingly this needs explanation. Those matters that are affected through the recitation of Tachnun, we also need to affect them in these days. Those days from Erev Yom Kippur until the end of Tishrei, whatever Tachnun accomplishes for us, we need to have that even during those days when seemingly the Alter Rebbe says we don't recite it. So the Rebbe is going to say here something that he repeated very, very often, including the famous letter to a Bar Mitzvah Bacher that asked about why on a day of a Bar Mitzvah do we recite Tachnun. The point of the idea that the Rebbe says is those times when Shulchan Aruch, Siddur, Halacha designated as not being times of saying Tachnun, we are not missing the Tachnun. The day itself accomplishes this. And this is the Rebbe's approach, and Chassidus' approach in many of these things. If Torah tells us that we are not supposed to do something, or we do not do something, it doesn't mean chas v'sholom that we're missing it. Just an example from something that we had this very year. This very year, the first day of Rosh Hashanah was Shabbos. We do not say that because we did not blow shofar on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, we're somehow missing the mitzvah of Tkiyas shofar. And the same thing by not taking the Lulav Nesrik the first day of Sukkot. Rather, Chassidus explains, the Rebbe elaborates, that whatever we accomplish in a regular year by blowing shofar is automatically accomplished when Rosh Hashanah coincides with Shabbos. In a similar vein, the Rebbe says over here that the Tachnun that we say a whole year round, whatever Tachnun accomplishes, is automatically accomplished by the very power of the day of the month of Tishrei. Let's see it inside second paragraph. From moving to this itself, it's understood. Those matters that under another situation, under a different time of year, we would accomplish through reciting Tachnun and through the Nefil Sapayim, that part of davening where we say we fall on our face. In his Gulas Yomim Elu, the special characteristic of the days of from Erev Yom Kippur until the end of the month of Tishrei, it's specifically not saying Tachnun, not falling on our face, that causes and brings down whatever we need to accomplish through saying Tachnun. So here the Rebbe is going to say the idea that this is something that's recorded in the Siddur, and since the Siddur is applicable to all, therefore this lesson that we just now heard applies to all equally. Since the Siddur, the Alter Rebbe, set up in such a way of something that should be equal for all. Even more so than the Shulchan Aruch. It says that the Alter Rebbe did not bring down kavonas, even though it was a siddur nusach harid that has to do with the based on ideas of the Arizal and so on. He did not bring in any deep kavonas or intentions in the siddur, because the siddur was written for everyone equally, whether a person knows Kabbalah, doesn't know Kabbalah, etc. Doesn't make a difference. The siddur is adavar hashav l'chol. And this is more than how Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch is also applicable to all. It's halach. It means to teach everybody what to do. But he says there's a difference between Siddur and Shulchan Aruch after all, even though Shulchan Aruch is applicable to all. Since the study of Shulchan Aruch demands attention, you need to focus. You can't just skip. And you need to be very exact. There are certain things that need to be derived from the exact language that's used in Shulchan Aruch. You can't just mix and match, because sometimes you're going to have the same halacha, it's going to look like it's the opposite. One paragraph it says like this, and a few paragraphs later it says differently. Why? Because you need to be very exact in understanding the case and the situation that he's talking about in this paragraph versus the case and situation he's talking a few paragraphs later. So it needs a lot of focus and being exact, etc., and attention. It's not necessarily for everyone in the same way. Masha enkin siddur, as opposed to the siddur shezkukim elav gimel pam b'chol yom. First of all, you need it at least 3 times a day, shachris mincha ma'ariv. And not only that, the truth is that Rebbe says you need it more than 3 times a day. Nois of lakach, in addition to the fact shagam ben atayim yeshin yom shel barachas v'chol v'chiyotz b'shuv b'siddur. In between these 3 times of the day where we need a davening, there is barachas that we're reciting and other things that are brought down the siddur. So therefore, the siddur is something that we use throughout the day without limitation. There's no sefer that we use as much throughout the day as a siddur. We always know how the Rebbe was also very careful to even recite Alamichya and so on, to recite it from the siddur, like we saw after the Farbrengen. He used to open up the siddur and look inside and recite Alamichya and so on. So we see even so-called minor things throughout the day he would take a siddur for. And then the Rebbe goes on to say, this is something that's applicable for men, women, and even children. Like we see specifically concerning the order of how we educate a child. Even before a child has reached the age of 5 years old, when he's learning Chumash, we already start learning with him the Siddur. Like the Alter Rebbe brings down at the beginning of the laws of Torah study, the child, when he begins to speak, his father teaches him Torah. And those matters that they study with him, then when the father starts teaching him, are, for example, Aleph Beis and also Psukim, Kshurim, Siddur, that's connected with the Siddur. So therefore, Harim moving, it's understood, the Rebbe concludes, Shegam Hayro Anal. Also the above mentioned lesson, Sheme'er and directive. It's both a lesson and a directive. Sheme'erev Yom Kippur Soifa Chodesh Einam Tachnun. From Erev Yom Kippur till the end of the month, we do not recite Tachnun. It's a lesson that all can understand it, and noshim, men, women, and children. Since even men, women, and children understand what's the word tachnun. Tachnun is from the word tachnunim. Tachnunim means we are begging, we are beseeching Hashem. Meaning, when we beg, we are begging when we're trying to affect, when we're trying to get something. When a child begs his parent for something, it's because he's really, really trying to get his parent to give it to him. So therefore, we can understand what there's a part of davening that's not just called tefillah, but it's a part of davening that's called tachanun. The interesting diuk that the Rebbe says. And this part of davening, which is called Tachnun, we are saying that we don't say it because it happens automatically. Mevinim heim, therefore they understand shebiyamim elu nifolim enyanim elu dafka yidei shlilas amiras tachnun, that in these days, the days that the Siddur says that one does not recite tachnun, so all of these things that normally begging tachnunim would have accomplished it, I am accomplishing it by not saying tachnun. And now the Rebbe says, what do I mean by not saying tachnun? By the Rebbe, there's no neutral. There's no, I'm not begging, I'm just sitting back and relaxing. No. If it's not tachnun, then you got to be doing a different avodah. What is that other avodah? Shezeu siman al inyan shel simcha. The not saying tachnun is a sign on joy. That's the simple idea of why we don't say tachnun in those days. We don't say tachnun in the days from Erev Yom Kippur until the end of Tishrei, because the whole month is a month of joy. It's getting ready for Zman Simchaseinu. Zman Simchaseinu. It's after Zman Simchaseinu. It's all about joy. So in other words, the not reciting tachnun means that through simcha during this time, we are evoking and accomplishing the same thing as we would have accomplished during a different time of year by tachnunim, by begging, by requests, which has to do with the Reb Marash Milchatchila Riber. Don't beg. Be happy. Go initially over instead of going under. Now, true, we're not reciting anymore L'David Hashem Oidi, but the lesson still applies. And at that time, it was still between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, so we were still reciting L'David Hashem Oidi. So the Rebbe also says that this has to do with that kapitel until. This idea that we just now said, it's also connected with the kapitel in Tehillim, chapter 27 of David Hashem Oidi, that David, it's a song that he says, Hashem is my light, that we say in these days, in the days when the Rebbe was Farbrengen. Hanekuda hapnimi shal mizbar zehi, the main point, the core point of this kapitel Tehillim is Bakshu fonai es panecha havaya avakish. Search out my face, that I am searching out your face, Hashem. What does that mean, your face? So we know Chassidus says panim in Lashon Kodesh is from the word hapnimius shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We are getting to the pnimius of Hashem. And the Rebbe is going to go on to explain, based on what it says in the Psukim, that from Hashem's pnimius, all goodness comes out from. All brachas, all life comes from Hashem's pnimius. So when we are connecting and we are evoking Hashem's pnimius, only good and brachas and life comes down. Last two lines, the simple meaning in this is, it says, in the light of the face of the king we live. The Chazal give an example of this, like he's soon going to make the idea that if someone is taken out to be executed, whatever, and he passes by the king, so just being in the presence of the king, that automatically removes the sentence from him of execution, because being in the face of the king, that is the source of life. Okay, like it's known, the explanation and the metaphor that I just now gave about this. Whatever state and situation that one finds themselves, at the time when we bump into the king, like we said, this person was obviously, legally, according to the laws of the king himself, he was liable for the opposite of life. But they greeted, they were in the presence, they they now experience the face of the king. Azai mekablim chayim. So then they receive life. And the Rebbe extends it like we know that life doesn't just entail a dry existence. If a person is getting life, especially from the king, especially from the pnimius of the king, the pnei melech, so then it has life with all of that comes with life. Chayim and kol perushim, life with all the meanings, like to make a living, to really live, not just to exist. The Chazal say that the one who gives life gives also sustenance. So therefore, included in this Ba'or Pnei Melech, that we are alive, is also all matters of good that's connected with being alive. Living the way we're supposed to live. Having all that we need, having all of our needs fulfilled. The Inyan Zeh Kosher, Gam Teres HaBaal Shem Tov. This is also connected also with the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. Shar Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Bar Ditchev Kosev, the Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Bar Ditchev writes about this teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. Shal Baal Shem Tov Haya Tamid Chayzer Lefnei Hakol. That the Baal Shem Tov would always repeat this in front of the congregation. This is a very interesting emphasis. The Rebbe says in Pirkei Avos, it says the expression Hu Haya Omer. Often in the Gemara, in the Mishnayos, it says Amar Rabbi Akiva, Amar Rabbi Shimon, Amar Rabbi Yehuda. That's something they said. When it says the expression Hu Haya Omer, this means he would constantly say this, which means this was something very special, very unique, especially to that person, and that's why he would constantly repeat it. It wasn't just a one-time thing that he said. So the Rebbe emphasizes, seems to me, that Rebbe Levi Yitzchak Bar Ditchever used to say that the Baal Shem Tov would say the following very often. Constantly he would say this before people. Al Pasuk Havaya Tzilcha, on the Pasuk that says Havaya is your shadow. Shakadosh Baruch Hu K'moy Tzel Shel Yehudi, that Hashem is like a shadow of a Yid. Kishem Shat Tzel Oisa Oisam Tnuis. Sha Oisa Adam Shemanu Nasa Tzel. Just like the shadow mimics, it copies the exact movements of a person that caused the shadow. Kach Gam Havaya Tzilcha, so to Hashem is your shadow, Yehudi misnaig lamata, the way a Yid acts down here below, so too, Kach oisa Gama Kadosh Baruch Hu kiviyachol, so too Hashem does above, and that's going to be the point that we've spoken about in different shiurim as well, of Simcha. Zeh Gam Mashakasa b'Zoyar, that the Zoyar says, Tochazi, come out and see. And the rest of the Zohar is that Kegavna, the way the Yid acts down here, he affects above. But right away the Rebbe says, we should know that it's Ta Chazi. Chazi, Ta means come, and Chazi means from like the word Chazoin, see this. The Rebbe is now in the brackets can explain how in Kabbalah, Pnimius HaTorah, everything is revealed. That's why the Zohar uses a term Tochazi, come and see. We are actually able to see the goodness of it. The Rebbe says this, we've had this in Sicha, speaking about that when it comes to like negative things that are written in the Torah, Kabbalah and Pnimius HaTorah reveals how they are positive. Let's learn the brackets. Like it's spoken about many times. The common expression in the study of the revealed part of the Torah, in other words, in Gemara, who toshma, come and hear, come and listen, come and understand. That's the term that's used in Gemara. Many places in the Gemara, it's used, that phrase, toshma. Hainu, this means, shetzarech lishmaya, one needs to listen, v'la'achri zetzarech lizboinen v'chulu, and afterwards one has to think into it. Shmiya, we know, is also from the word understanding, like the Rebbe often explains in the word Shema Yisrael, doesn't just mean to hear and listen, but it means to understand. Kol apratim sheyeshna b'shmiya, all the details that be found in the idea of hearing, listening, etc. Mash'enken haloshen bezoyar hu tochazi, as opposed to the expression in Zoyar, is come and see. Hainu shalpi aidei pnimius ha-Torah, through the inner part of Torah. And the inner part of Torah, we're not limited to the Zoyar. Shebederisenu elu, the Rebbe says, in our generation, nisgalso beferish aidei Torah sachsidus. The inner part of Torah is revealed and with explanation through Torah Chassidus. Mayonis Torah Baal Shem Tov, the well springs of the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, V'lacher Zebetoisus Bir Torah Chabad, and afterwards with additional explanation in the teachings of Chabad Chassidus. The Rebbe says, regardless of the fact that we're in a time of Golus. Golus is usually a time of darkness and we cannot see godliness, etc. So he says, through Pnimius HaTorah, through the inner part of Torah, through learning Chassidus, Efsher Lahagia Gam L'Chazi, it's possible to reach even the level of Chazi, in Yeshoriyah, idea of sight. This is all parenthetical. He started saying that the Zohar says, Ta Chazi, come see, Shekigavna. Kigavna means just like. Kifi sheYehudi mare ponov lamata, the way a Yid shows his face down here below. Kach marim legamel mailo, so too he is shown from above. V'kach sheYehudi mare ponim shel chedva, when a Yid shows a face of joy, marim lechedva mel mailo, they show him joy from above. Kifi sheHazoyar meirich b'zeh protis, like the Zohar speaks about this at length and in detail. So the Rebbe says now very clear words what this means for us in times when Yidden are going to war anywhere in the world. Umitzad kol inyanim anal, because of all the above matters, Harimuven, it's understood, Sha'aderech l'sayeya biyomim elu, the way to assist in these days, it's through a manner of joy. Shesimcha pirates gather. Simcha breaks through barriers. Now, in general, we're talking about it breaks through barriers of the decree. It breaks through barriers between one person and another person. It breaks through barriers of difficulties and challenges, etc., etc. So the Rebbe adds in the parentheses, Gam hageder shel hefsek mokum gashmi. Also, what was mentioned before the shir started, also the category of a separation of a physical space. They are fighting thousands of miles away from us, and we are here. But our joy breaks through barriers and connects us with the Yidden and Eretz Yisrael as well. So the Rebbe again, he explains it clearly. V'hainu, this means shekidei sheyeh ba'er pnei malachayim, so it should be able to be that with the light of the face of the King we live. That we said before, chayim kipshutam, literal life, im kol inyanim sheboim biyachad im chayim, with all the matters that come along with and are included with life. Shenikroim b'chlolos mezoyned, that in general they're called sustenance. They're all included in the title of sustenance. Everything to make a life be a life. V'yumshech lamata ma'asara tvachim. And we want that this life should come down here below in our world. That's what he calls lower than 10 handbreadths, means physically in our world. L'chol echad ve'achas mebnei Yisrael b'chol makom shehem. To every single man and woman from Bnei Yisrael, wherever they are. And we want that life with everything in it to come down. How does that take place? The Rebbe says very clearly, Harei deizeh, in one place, in the entire globe, Jews gather together. On all 10 Yidden, the Shechina rests. And especially when we have Kama Sirius, many times 10. So for sure, just are getting together and just are being Besimcha brings down life for everybody. Even the Yidden that are somewhere far away. Val achas kama v'kama kishmekashrim zaysim inyan shal Torah v'yisayra shal Yiras Shamayim. How much more so when we connect it with a matter of Torah and inspiration of fear of heaven. Val achas kama v'kama kishmekashrim im hilula shenosi shal Chol Bnei Yisrael. The Rebbe concludes how much more so when it's connected with the yard of a leader of all the Yidden. In other words, the Rebbe Marash. Especially in this night, that was, like I said, it was the night going into the day before Sukkot, so it connects the yard of the Rebbe Marash that was on the 13th of Tishrei with the day of Erev Sukkot on the 14th of Tishrei. Concerning Erev Sukkot, he brings in his siddur, a siddur, not the siddur we're talking about before, but the siddur that's fat siddur has a lot of chassidus in it. He brings down how you need to spend and spread out money to poor people on the day before Sukkot. We know tzedakah is equal to all the mitzvahs. And it brings the redemption close. And this does not leave its simple meaning. That this should bring about the ultimate thing, the true redemption, the complete redemption from the Golus, soon in actuality in the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu.